Welcome to the Association 100 podcast. The A100 podcast is an extension of our Association 100 bi-monthly newsletter that focuses on best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies and tactics that work in the world of associations. The podcast will feature meaningful conversations with association professionals across the country, taking a deeper dive into trending topics, offering insights that both inform and inspire. Welcome back to the A100 podcast. I'm Colleen Gallagher, and today I'm joined by my two ONU co-hosts, Meghan Henning and Christine Stay. A constant conversation we're hearing among associations and the workforce in general is around managing a hybrid workforce and how you keep culture alive. So before we jump into this, I want to kind of set the stage with a whole bunch of stats that we pulled around what this looks like and what today's environment is. And so some of this came from a McKinsey report, and we saw 84% of employees working remotely due to COVID-19 say that they prefer to have a mixed working culture of working both at home and at their work location. 85% of individuals believe they can be effective anywhere they work from and intend to remain employed with their current employer if that's the case and they're allowed to do that. Microsoft surveyed more than 30,000 employees from 31 countries. 65% prefer on-site scheduling with team, 70% prefer flexible working options. A Stanford study showed 2,500 U.S. residents showed 55% of workers want flexible office between office and home. And then another study from Pew showed that 55% of workers claim they prefer to work from home at least 3 days a week. And then finally, a study found that 51% of employees would quit outright if they were asked to give up their new hybrid working model. McKinsey's annual American Opportunity Survey showed a really striking number that 58% of Americans reported having the opportunity to work from home at least 1 day a week. And this was across all jobs, even blue collar jobs you wouldn't typically associate with the ability to have a hybrid model. It also showed that 35% of respondents reported having the option to work from home 5 days a week. Another one of the survey's revelations was that when people have the chance to work flexibly, 87% of them take it. So I know I just talked at everyone for a while with a bunch of stats, but what I think that shows from all these different organizations is hybrid work is here to stay. Meghan and Christine, what do you guys think?
I mean, yeah. I think so, right? I mean, as Christine and I sit in our homes saying this, but I think, you know, we've always known this, right? We've always known that you could work from home, that you yourself as an employee would be able to work if you could be home. It wasn't until COVID that we got to see that this national, you know, example of how we could do this. And I would say that I think that I'm with the 51% of people who would quit their job. I can't imagine going back into an office 5 days a week. I just can't.
I couldn't agree more, Meghan. And those stats are so powerful. And like you said, after COVID really put just the workforce in general under a microscope. And I agree. I can't imagine going back to 5 days a week. Ironically, even before COVID, around 2011, I began working from home. So I was even one of the young ones back in the day, pre-COVID, BC. And it was really funny because COVID's not funny, but after COVID and people were forced immediately to work from home. I mean, some people had a day's notice, hours notice that, okay, maybe we'll see you in 2 weeks. No one knew how long it was going to go on for. And everyone, all my friends, colleagues, family were calling me and saying, how do you do this? How do you make it work for you? And I just had to give examples. So I was actually teaching a lot of people how to work from home because they were going from 5 days a week and I had been doing this for years. So it was very interesting to kind of see that bridge of I've been doing this for a while, but now everybody has to do this.
Yeah. Well, Meg and I were just talking about this because I'm someone who likes to work in an office, and I do like to go in. Although I think it depends on the job, and I feel like it comes back to what we were hearing in those stats about flexibility. Because I like to work in an office where I can walk. So I walk here. It's not like I'm far from home. I can run home and walk the dog. I can leave right when I need to go pick up Zoe from daycare. So I have that flexibility, but I get to come in when I want to and when I need to be in, if I need to be out of that apartment space. And I think some of it has to do with living in an apartment, which is smaller quarters than a house where you don't necessarily have a set room for your office kind of a thing. So, it's just, you've got to meet the needs of different people on different teams in terms of what they're looking for. And I also think it has to do with the commute big time, because when I left during the pandemic, you say no notice. I left a plant on my desk thinking, oh, well, I'll be back in a week. I can water this then. 2 years later, I went to pick up my stuff after I left that job.
Oh, that thing was so thirsty.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. But at the same time, that was a commute from Virginia to DC, and you couldn't have paid me all the money in the world to go back to that, doing that every day. So I do get that viewpoint of it as well, despite the fact that I am someone who normally likes to be in an office environment.
And I think you touched upon something really smart, is not smart as much as what we have to keep in our heads is this: everybody works differently. That flexibility, that there's some people that do enjoy being in the office every day. Maybe somebody likes being in the office one day a week, and some people just are better working at home. So I think we'll have to cover kind of being flexible with the workforce and your team on what works for everybody individually.
Yeah, I will echo that. I think that figuring out how people work and figuring out how you work yourself. This has been something that, for the past 10 years, I worked with the Global Business Travel Association and was kind of my own version of hybrid. I came into the office when both I wanted to and when I was needed, but I had the flexibility. And I do think that flexibility is the key. And I will say, we are 3 women on this call, and flexibility for women, I think, is a major game changer. It allows you to deal with your life, because most households, the responsibility of a household falls to women, whether or not they want it or not. But I do think it does. And having that flexibility in our job can allow you to go to the grocery store on your lunch hour. You would not do that at your office, but you can do that now. You can manage your time. And I do think that being given the ability to manage your own time I definitely think it's made me more successful, both as a parent and a wife and a colleague, because I am able to manage all the things that are sort of on my plate. And I think that has made me a better employee.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. And I think we're all on the same page in terms of from the worker view. I think where it gets tricky is from the company viewpoint. And I know this is something I think a lot about for ONU in particular, because we do have a few people in the office and the majority of our team remote. And how do you manage that culture and keep a team culture alive? And I think for some teams that's really hard. Others it comes easier, and it gets trickier too as you add new people into the mix who have never had that initial in-person connection. So you're meeting online, and how does that change things? So I think there's a lot of things to consider on that. How do we stay connected front?
I agree. I think that connection is so important in the workforce. So, even as something simple as a weekly team meeting. I know a lot of companies that still do not do that. I think that just keeping updated with what everyone is working on project-wise, just keeping everybody informed. It's very easy when you are at home all the time to stay in your lane, stay in your tunnel, focus, and which is good because it keeps you on top of your own projects and tasks. But it's good to know what everybody is working on, and it makes you feel more a part of a team and that overall goal.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think, Colleen, you do a good job. We have our weekly meeting, but we also get a chance to bring up, if it's somebody's birthday or you're going to mention someone's husband or child or something like that. And I do think that while maybe that didn't exist in your regular staff meetings when you were sitting around a board table, I like that they've been brought up on our Zoom calls because it makes me feel more connected. I mean, we started right before we started this call, Christine and I love our murder mystery podcast, and we get to talk about that. But that is one way we do strengthen our connection, even though we're hundreds of miles apart.
Yeah, I think the other thing that successful teams do, and this is some of the individual contacts. So having one-on-ones with your manager that are structured in a way that's not like, let's just go through your punch list of items, but you come with me, this is your meeting, tell me what you need, what can we talk about, and where can you grow in your career, things like that. And then having it be an environment where no one feels nervous to set up a call or a video call with another staff member. I mean, that's gotta be even in an in-person environment, you don't want someone to feel nervous to go down the hall to talk to someone, but even more so, I think it's harder probably for newer employees, especially, to be willing to say, oh, I need to ask someone a question. Can I just call them or get on a video with them or things like that? So
that comfort level is so important to the team. I completely agree to that. And making it almost conversational, like we're just having a conversation. This is not you versus me. I think that's crucial.
And I think that comes from the top down because
100%.
Managers and CEOs and executive directors, they have to set that tone so that people aren't afraid to reach out and to know that, you're sort of all in it together. Whatever role you play, it's a crucial piece of, the pie. In order to get all of this, you play a particular role. And I think that when managers and executive directors, that's where they have to show that to their employees that, hey, come to me, don't be nervous. Because, I want you to succeed. You want me to succeed. And this is how we're all overall going to succeed.
Agreed. And one of the things I will say that a suggestion to anyone that doesn't use interpersonal messaging is get on board with that, whether it's Teams, whether it's Slack.
Look at you, Megan.
And I will say, so I've never used Slack before coming onto ONU. And for me and my millennial kind of ways, it reminds me of that old school AOL AIM. Yep. And I know that some people are going to be like, what is that? Especially maybe some of the younger crowd. But it just, I will say it's nice to just shoot messages, almost like a text, whether it's to the whole team individually. And I think if someone doesn't have that set up in their company already, they should definitely utilize that.
Yes. And as somebody who is an old dog teaching new tricks, I struggle with the Slack. But I think instead of changing my mindset to there are all these different ways to be able to reach your employees as opposed to, the phone or email. And so I do like that. I like that there's really no way that I can't reach everybody, especially since we have people, in different time zones and on different continents.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things with Slack is that it helps facilitate informal communication that you wouldn't do in an email. So like the memes that get shared and the funny jokes or quips or things like that. So just having clear expectations for the different kind of communication channels so people know where they need to be and feel that they're not overwhelmed and that they can keep up with everything, know where to find things, and having a clear, process for things like that really helps for integrating those into your internal comm structure.
Definitely.
But to what Megan was saying, I think that also goes hand in hand with your manager or upper level, like knowing what works for everybody. Something might work better than others, and a good manager recognizes that and can build a relationship with their employee regarding what works best for them.
Yeah, for sure. So Christine, you're obviously our project management expert. So we use Monday at ONU, but how do you think project management tools in general can help with a hybrid workforce, especially?
Yeah, I think it's important to have some sort of project management tool because especially people working from home, to stay on top of the tasks and projects, I think you have to be a little bit harder on yourself to keeping on goal with things. Not that it's easy when you're home to kind of just let things be bygone, but I think you just need a little bit more of a straightforward system. And also it helps everyone, again, know what everybody's working on. Yeah. And setting, and like you were saying, expectations. Setting those expectations on timelines, deadlines. Anytime I hear somebody that struggles with working from home, for example, they say like, I have a hard time staying with those deadlines or staying on task. Having those specific deadlines definitely assists keeping everything going seamlessly, smoothly.
Well, and I like our tool as well. I mean, I really like the Monday tool, because if you have a question, you can put it in there and then everyone who's working on this can see it. And I think, again, that's one more collaboration that you get that you would have gotten in an office, but this is a very seamless way to have this collaboration. So I definitely like this. And I would have been somebody who thought, oh my God, one more platform for me to pay attention to. And I find this to be so helpful, so unbelievably helpful.
Yeah, I think the insight into what others are doing is great too. So that, you know, if you want to ask someone for something or you're wondering why you haven't heard, and all of a sudden you see they have 12 tasks due today, it's like, oh, okay, I should back off, or no, they do have time. I can reach out and get them to help with this kind of thing. It gives you a lot clearer vision into what's going on around the company.
Agreed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about, we talk a lot about bringing people together, and we did an in-person annual retreat. You know, what do you think about that in-person time and how that can help a hybrid workforce in the long run?
Truly essential, right? I mean, Christine, I hadn't met you before then. And after spending like 2.5 days, I feel like you and I could be best friends. And I mean that. So I feel like that's so important that I am so thrilled we did that.
That's very sweet, and I feel the same exact way. And that is exactly the testimonial to something like that, where, you know, we talk about the connections and that we make it work, the hybrid situation, but any organization, association, company, at least once a year, if they can get the whole team together in person, you really do need that. You need that form of connection, that in-person connection, talking about goals, tasks, but also just getting to know each other. Because I've always felt that I'm going to go the extra mile, that loyalty, that extra bat, like when I know someone and I can trust someone, and that trust level is so important as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that. Do you remember those MasterCard commercials where it would say like plane ticket, you know, $300, hotel, you know, $200, but then meeting your colleagues in person, priceless. It is. It's totally priceless. I definitely felt like it strengthened our culture too. And just as what you had said, and Colleen and I had talked about this when we were thinking of planning it. And I think it delivered, you know, way more than than we even thought. And we had high hopes for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I think it was worth it leaps and bounds. And I remember thinking that week, you know, after coming out of those couple of days, just being so incredibly happy and excited and motivated, and just feeling the bonds were stronger. And Christine, you talked to loyalty, and I think there's a big discussion around that with the generation gaps, and, you know, younger millennials and Gen Z have no loyalty to a company. And I don't know that that's fair to say. I think the job hopping comes from when they don't feel the company has loyalty to them or cares about them. And I think that in a hybrid situation in particular, you have to be really conscientious about checking in on your employees, thinking about their well-being, knowing how they're doing, and making them feel comfortable to speak about things like that. And that's part of creating a good culture there.
And ironically, we just had another podcast that we, you know, interviewee, Phil Russo, and he was talking about exactly this, that we have to remember that people are humans and workers are humans, and connecting on that level is so crucial to, just getting to know people. And remember, he was saying about that, this person might have had a funeral, a family member passed away last month, or their child is going to college or getting married, or just making those small connections and building that loyalty and trust. I think that's not a generational thing. I think if a company or association realizes that somebody is a human and checks in and connects with them, that's going to build that loyalty.
Right. And when you think back, like, to when you have had good job experiences or have had the opposite, the thing that's always kept me at a job is if I felt like my manager understood me and respected me, then I was 100% loyal back. Even when I might have been annoyed at certain things, I still was like, okay, well, this person, they understand me and they respect me and I respected them. And of course it works the opposite. If you feel like your manager doesn't respect you, there is no reason for you to stay. And I come from a generation that people were like, well, you have to stay for a year. Like, if you took a job and in 6 weeks it was terrible, you still had to stay there for a year. And that has certainly changed. But I think, Colleen, you're right. Like, the mentality of loyalty exists when it's two ways. I mean, you have to believe in your employees and then they'll believe in you.
Yeah. And I think, I know this isn't always the case, and sometimes people do leave for good, valid reasons that don't have to do with this, but that quote that always comes back to me is, people don't leave companies, they leave bad bosses.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot.
And it should.
Definitely
it should happen. Like, to me, that's the natural progression. Like, why would you want to stay and work for somebody who's horrible to you? There are jobs out there. And again, COVID, put this emphasis on us. And now, it's the world belongs to the employee, which is hard for employers. But it is an opportunity for you, for companies and associations to take a look. Like, if all of a sudden 6 people on your team leave, hey, maybe start paying attention to that manager and, get them some courses and some education, because everyone isn't born to be a manager. Like, you do have to work at it. And there's no shame in that. It should be something that you're kind of always progressing to be.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. And Christine, I liked how you talked about, like, the feeling cared about is really cross generation. That's not anything subject to a certain thing. But I think the one thing that is particular to younger generations of staffers is needing to understand their career path at your company. I think that's something that now is really needs to be explained and laid out and shown, like, this is where you can go if you stay here. And these are the professional development opportunities we're going to give you to help you get there. More so than I know. I mean, I always would have loved to take some of those professional development opportunities, and I would work and never have time to do them. And that's something with ONU we've really put a huge focus on and shifting, in that we need to pause and make time for this, because, coming back to another, like, famous quote is, if you invest in someone and they leave, you're out that money. If you don't invest in them and they stay, is that good?
Yeah. Exactly. And I was going to interject, Colleen, you're one of the biggest proponents about professional development, which is very refreshing. And I feel that does go along with growing your employee, but also showing that you care. You care that they grow, that they're just not a worker bee, and they're not there to just work, which, listen, we are supposed to be doing that, but that shows a level of care that you do understand and care about their path. And we can get, like you said, with time and how much workload, it's very easy to kind of put that aside. But when you have a manager or CEO that really prides himself on that and makes sure that it's a priority, that just shows that they care.
Yeah. I think there's, in some respects, there's no better way to show that you care than to be able to say, like, we're investing in you, even if you do leave. Like, we still believe in you, and we want you to be happy, and we want you to grow, because nobody thinks that when they're taking a job, certainly if you're hiring someone who's like 22, that they're going to die at that job. Of course they're going to go. And we've all left, different jobs, but you hope that, again, that someone paying attention to your career path and paying attention to your personal and professional development, that to me is the best way to say, like, we appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. This has been a really awesome conversation. I think I'd be curious. I hope we hear from associations to hear what they're doing if they've switched to a hybrid model. But I think, coming back to some of the key takeaways, it's that setting those expectations, having good comms channels in place, finding at least one time a year to bring everyone together and showing that you're cared about within the team. I feel like those are the pieces that make it work.
Yep, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing your thoughts and having this conversation with me today. And thanks everyone for tuning in.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Association 100 podcast, brought to you by the A100 publishing team, powered by OnWrd UpWrd Marketing and Communications. You can subscribe to the Association 100 podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all of your favorite podcast listening apps so you'll never miss out. Or listen via our website at theassociation100.com. Follow us on Twitter at Association100. That's Association100 for all the latest insights and trends impacting the world of associations. Thanks for tuning in.